guys, so today I have a review for you on Smoke Gets in Your Eyes and Other Lessons from the Crematory by Caitlin Doughty. That was a mouthful. This is a memoir about the first part of Caitlin's life, and it really follows her time working as a mortician in a crematory in California. It's obviously a very unique topic which isn't talked about much, and I feel like she really used this book as a way to sort of explain to people a little bit more about the death industry, really. Not only does she focus on, experiences that she's had, she also brings in the history of death in different places around the world. She talks about the different ways people want their bodies to be taken care of after their death, and it's really just a way for us to start thinking and talking more about death as a whole, because it's inevitable for everyone. So Caitlin witnessed a pretty gruesome death when she was younger, and it made her terrified of the idea of death. And she did study medieval history in university, which, that says something about somebody when you study medieval history, but she ended up taking that degree and using it to become a mortician because it was something that interested her, and it was also sort of a way to test herself because she had been so afraid of this death and it had really haunted her since she was little. She became a mortician and immersed herself in this industry to get a better idea of how people were treated and how bodies were treated, and maybe sort of figure out what she wanted to do and how she wanted to change the industry. So you have that part of it, but you also have history lessons where she talks about how sort of funerals and people dying and how that's changed over the years in the US. She mentions a bit about other countries as well. And then she also talks about just how the industry is shifting and the good and the bad. But the most fascinating part is talking about the specific people that she is preparing and then eventually cremating. She does not hold back on detail, which I love. Some people might not love, but that's really like, you know what you're getting yourself into. There's going to be some gruesome details, and I thoroughly enjoyed reading this book. I did give it a 5 out of 5 stars. It's not a long book by any means, and I read it in about 6 days or so, sort of taking my time, but then realizing as I was going through it that, hey, this book's really good and I want to keep reading. And my favorite parts were definitely talking about the different people that she was preparing to be cremated, and their families and their stories, and sometimes the bodies were a little different, and she'd talk about how they were different and how she would do certain things. Like one of the first things she talks about is having to shave a body. That's not something that I do on a regular basis, so it fascinates me to read about it. And then she does talk about dealing with the families and even going to fetch bodies and bringing them back to where she works. And this was all so interesting to me because I've obviously never worked in this industry. Although I don't think I would want to work there, I certainly love learning about things, and I definitely learned a lot reading this. The historic portions were not quite as interesting to me. I honestly just wanted more stories about the bodies that she dealt with and the families that she dealt with. That was by far the best part. And there was the reflection, on her past and how that was influencing her to do what she's currently doing. And those parts were good too. But by far the best parts were the actual instances of, here's this little snapshot of this one day when I was working and I had to actually let the family into the crematory and they were pushing the button to put the body in to be burned. Like, that's crazy! And I did relate to this on a certain level because she was talking about having to do all these crazy things for the first time and being put in these situations where she felt uncomfortable but also challenged. And I feel like a lot of people can relate to that with their job. If you're put into a new situation, you don't quite know how it's gonna go, but you gotta do it. And so those parts, even though I have never, prepared a body, I understood where she was coming from when she was talking about having to go into a home for the first time and actually pick up a body and bring it back, and sort of having the whole family just staring at you, and of course you're this young female and they don't really expect you to be a young female. That whole part of it was like, I related to that in a different way, but it really helped me connect with her and understand where she was coming from. She does reflect a bit on sort of her mental health and her mental state while she's doing this, because obviously if you're constantly dealing with bodies and you're thinking about death a lot, and you're probably contemplating your place in the world, and so that does come up a bit as well. All that being said, if you are looking for a fast, interesting, memoir or nonfiction book and you have a pretty strong stomach and you can take some gruesome details, I absolutely recommend reading this. It is also worth mentioning that Caitlin does have a YouTube channel. She's very active on social media, and if you search Order of the Good Death, you can find her, and she makes videos on a pretty regular basis. I actually watched a few after reading this book, and she just talks about all different kinds of things related to death and the funeral industry and all that stuff. So if you're looking for more information, you'll be able to find it because she's still very active, and that's kind of part of her whole wanting to change the industry for the better, is making people more aware of what's going on and having people be more informed about what they can do and maybe open up their eyes to how they want their body to be treated after death. Like, I certainly thought a lot more about it, and I think it's great that she wrote this book. Highly recommend it. If you have read it, please let me know what you thought of it down below. As always, all of our links are in the doobly-doo. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you later.